Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Feels like ages since I've done a phase retrospective on the channel now. Phase 4 is well underway and many eyes on the horizon and the release of phase 5 of classic World of Warcraft. How we're nearly on phase 5 already still feels kind of weird. It seems to all be going by so fast to me. Anyways, looking back at phase 4 and how it all went down does bring along some interesting issues, not only linked to the content but also more unexpected problems like the return of queues and how Blizzard has dealt with it, and even the fallout from several servers as a result. Just for reference, the time between phases 3 and 4 were 2 months, which was actually correct with the vanilla timeline for once. In vanilla, Zul'Gurub and the Wrathy Basin came out on the 13th of September 2005, and AQ was the 3rd of January 2006. Is our phase 4 gonna last 3.5 months as well? I doubt it. And we're coming up to a month and a half into phase 4 now. I think we're gonna have AQ announced within the middle of June and out early July. In fact, I'm gonna say phase 5 either on the 7th, 8th or 9th of July. The release dates always vary a bit, so one of them. Let's see how far off I end up being. Anyways, let's talk phase 4. Wrathy Basin, just like all the other battlegrounds, came earlier than expected, about 1 month ahead of the rest of phase 4, and gave a good amount of life back into the PvP scene, I think. It greatly lowered the queue times for Horde players looking to get back into some PvP action as well, which I'm sure was very welcome at the time. And by this point, despite many players being done with ranking, well, ranking never quite ends in Classic, to be honest, and Wrathy Basin, just like Warsun Gulch, can be freely joined as a pre-made. This means Wrathy Basin has become the new go-to for pre-mades to join. Once again, the old issue of pre-made versus pugs is raising its head. With how active Wrathy Basin was early on, it was great on a power, easily beating out Warsun Gulch when you take into account that you can win within about 5 minutes, and that means you're farming marks of honour at crazy rate in AB, much to the despair of the average pug player sat in their graveyard hoping that the next game will be a little bit more even. At this point, I think I can say that I don't really see the obvious solution to pug versus pre-made. I have advocated separating pre-mades into their own queue in some fashion previously, but all this is going to do is skyrocket the queue times for Horde players even more so than they already are at the moment. Would you take an even longer queue for pug versus pug, or relatively short queues and risk pre-mades? I think either side is legitimate and there's no wrong answer. At the end of the day, it's all behaviour enabled by a PvP system driven by the fact that its rewards are the items, not the activity itself. In fact, I think the only real answer is some form of cross-faction PvP, but let's be real, we all know that's never gonna happen, is it? Interestingly, we also found out that war games are in Classic. Through some big brain players working out some details, one team of 10, or however many players can challenge another team. This is basically pre-made versus pre-made, except there are no reputation or honour rewards. It's purely for the fun of the PvP. Imagine that. If this is news to you, and that sounds like something you'd like to get involved in, I would recommend checking your server's Discord, or possibly a subreddit if you have one, and trying to find more information there. I also really like this for the potential of community events and tournaments on Twitch, which as of today Apes have done one fairly recently, which I thought it was pretty solid for a first iteration. Moving on, we had our next set of world bosses, the Green Dragons. Have to cover them off really, not too much to say about them. Some nature resist gear for guilds heading into AQ40, enables quite a bit of spicy world PvP too. People did however have a bit of an issue with them, or how many of them there were, shall we say. We'll talk about that more a bit later. We got Zul'Gurub, our first 20-man raid opening in Classic. Now, ahead of ZG, it wasn't really expected for it to be a guild breaker by any expectation. Even then, it's easy, which is fine to be honest. It's a catch-up raid, so to speak, smaller in size, needs a smaller group. Honestly, I quite like ZG. It's pretty chill. There also feels like there's less expectation to have world buffs and consumables and so on compared to other raids. Not that I particularly mind that for the main raids, but it's nice just not having to worry about it for once. On top of that, it's just got loads of really good loot in there, much of it being just rare quality. On top of the new enchants, the Zandlar rep with all the new items that brings, the new potions, items especially like Bloodvine, and a new place for mages to make an obscene amount of gold every hour. Not forgetting the mounts of course, which either seem to be fairly common or people are just really lucky. I guess the raid's available every 3 days, I'm sure that has some bearing on it. I haven't even seen one of them yet though. The very low barrier to entry, easy content, good gear, pretty relaxed atmosphere, and it being a short raid made ZG something I really look forward to week in, week out. Also, just to note, the quote-unquote impossible Hakar kill leaving up all priests was also taken out day 1, where a guild pretty much walked in fully world buff and deleted him before he did any mechanics. So yeah, that was interesting to see, I guess. So up to this point, everything I've gone over was stuff we expected in phase 4. We also got a few extra bits thrown in there, that mainly being the introductory quests in Silithus, which really should have been in phase 5, but as I've just shown in a previous video, phase 5 has pretty massive amounts amounts of content already, so I quite like we got this now as a little something extra to tie us over until this new phase. This included the quests around the hives, the ability to summon elemental dukes in Silithus, as well as starting to collect the text, which can be turned into start farming that Cenarian Circle rep as soon as possible, or do it the efficient way, which is just to farm many Twilight Hammer members until honoured, and then start handing in the text and doing the quests. At least I believe that's the right way to do it. It wasn't what I did, but oh well. The recipe for smoked desert dumplings also entered the game early, much to the joy of warriors, as well as the Rune Stygian and Dark Soul sets, which are randomly obtained via mail after turning in 10 encrypted Twilight texts at Hermit Hotel in southeastern Silithus. Also finishing the whole questline around Silithus from Cenarian Hold and doing the calling quest will reward you with some very strong nature resist items that you will want on more or less every single class as a good start to your nature resist set if you intend to enter and progress a queue. So that covers our content, but quite a few more things happened in and around Classic which were not planned, shall we say. More a rather unfortunate result of current world events. We got queues back, something I really didn't expect to happen again after the early days of the game, but on larger servers things were starting to get really bad. On my reset day, Wednesday, queues started to pop up around 3 or 4 PM, and on the weekend even earlier than that, and as far as I'm aware, things were even worse on North America, where servers are even higher population at the top end. Blizzard, in a rare moment, did a community post asking for feedback on the re-implementation of layering to the game. I did a video on it of course, where the TLDR was I thought they would turn it back on, but if they did they had to restrict new characters and transfer to the layer servers. Blizzard would end up doing exactly this in time, but not before offering free transfers off those huge realms first of all onto several smaller ones. Some of these smaller ones already had pretty solid faction balance, large guild representations, and a build up their own community, which was overrun overnight as literally thousands of new players fled mega servers like Incendius and Whitemane to get a new queue-free home. Even after this though, queues were still a thing. It was at this point Blizzard layered realms again. This was a rather unfortunate conclusion Blizzard had to come to in order to facilitate the new surging homebound player base, especially when we look back to the day at the release of Classic, how layering was talked about initially. Quite a few people though would use world bosses as a real tragedy of layering existing. Honestly, I don't think it's too much of an issue. 90% of the guilds killing multiple world bosses would have been killing them anyways on one layer for gear. They wouldn't have even needed to clear the content that's to come. I think it gives more guilds a chance to see world bosses. The loot, whilst yes good, and no there shouldn't be 2 world bosses, ideally, it is what it is. Apart from that one bug where some servers had 2 dragons in a row, that one was a bit of a whoopsie. I was just more worried that layering would be done without restricting new players to servers, because if that were the case then any server under those circumstances would have been permanently overpopulated, so I'm at least glad they did this. And just recently in fact, Blizzard have removed layering from NA realms for some reason. Honestly, they say their data shows that it was the right time to do this, but as far as I'm aware, this just means that queues are back. In fact, big NA realms are more populated than big EU realms, and we still have layering in EU. It's all a bit questionable, decision-wise. I fully expected Blizz to more or less just say, ah well, you know, layering's here now, we might as well just leave it on until a queue is open at least, but apparently not. Also, I thought layering would have a bigger effect on the economy and prices going down. What's happened? They've gone up and up. I mean, yeah, we have a queue soon, it makes sense, but still, I thought the supply and demand would get a bit closer than they have been on one layer. It also feels as though layering is a bit of a placebo to drive prices even higher than they would have been on one layer. I mean, the day layering was removed on NA, Black Lotus prices instantly spiked to 500G. Granted, they have settled down now, but I think without layering, they would have ended up being cheaper than they are at the moment. On EU, Lotus went up just out of the thought that layering may be removed soon. I can't wait to get some footage of 600 gold Lotus once layering is actually removed in EU. Speaking of Lotus, for real, it's getting out of hand price-wise. Look, I don't want Flasks to be something as accessible as a mana potion, okay? Exclusivity is good. They wouldn't be special if they were so easy to get hold of, but at the moment I just can't justify using one when I'm either not required to by my guild or on non-Darkmoon Fair weeks. Early on in Phase 4, a flask was about 150 gold or so, which is still pretty high, but it's okay, I can deal with that, okay? I can make that much money. Nowadays on most servers you're paying over 200 gold for the Lotus alone. It feels really good being able to flask up with all your other buffs. It feels so bad having to throw so much gold at getting them. I genuinely feel like I'm scamming myself by paying the current prices, and this is coming from somebody who plays a rather unhealthy amount of Classic and can absolutely afford to flask up. It's just weird. It feels like I'm adding to the problem by buying them. I think possible solutions are clear enough. More dynamic spawns, for instance. You guys will let me have to know how you feel on this subject, because trust me, without any action, it's only going to get worse. Overall though, Phase 4 has been very enjoyable for me. I've liked getting stuck into ZG, got my entry Silphus quest done, got a nice amount of prep for AQ out of the way, so I'm about 80% ready to go on launch day, I'd say. So, classic WoW Phase 4. Was it any good though? Overall, yes. Well, at least content-wise. Blizzard's free transfers weren't the best way to go about solving overpopulation, as you would have thought they had seen in Phase 2, but hey, there you go. Hopefully things improve, not only in-game, but for us all in real life as well. I do hope you guys are all well and keeping safe, and I will see you all in the next one. If you like what you see, give the video a like and subscribe, as there's plenty more to come. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Take care. Bye.